Hey guys, Thunder E here, and this is the video you've been waiting for. Of course, gaming on the Galaxy Z Fold 7. Yes. Why should we care about gaming on this device? Because we like to game on every single device. Now, if you join us for the very first time on this channel, we do a lot of gaming on devices like this, and the Z Fold 7 is no different, except it's Samsung's thinnest smartphone that packs Samsung's ultra features. That's kind of how they spun it, right? So what do we have with this device here? This is a foldable, and since it's a foldable, it comes with two displays. The cover display is 6.5 inches, 120 hertz refresh rate, so you can game at the highest performance you want to. And then the internal display is 8 inches, 120 hertz, so there's more real estate for gaming, and this is where we're going to be doing a lot of the gaming on this device. It does come with the Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset, which is the most powerful chipset out there on the Android ecosystem, and 12 gigabytes of RAM in this version I have here, which is 256 or 512, while the 1 terabyte comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM. So that's your choices there. Now, in terms of pricing, it starts at $1,999. It's $100 more than what it was last year. But we're going to look at some of the gaming performance on this device, going from cover screen to internal screen, what kind of performance we get there. Also, we'll listen to the speakers while we game as well to see how well they sound for a gaming period. And we will try controllers on here. So I've got a Pro Kishi here, and I've also got the GameStar G8 here, which should be able to fit this device. Now, first thing we're going to look at is benchmarks, because yes, even though this is a Snapdragon 8 Elite, let's see what kind of performance we get off Geekbench for this device. When looking at the benchmark numbers, I did have to run it a couple of times just because first setup, had to clear everything out. I did get a single core score of 2,784, multi-core of 9,524, which is actually not bad. But when I kind of compare that to my Galaxy S25 Ultra, that was 3,095, so nowhere close to 3,000 for single core, and multi-core was almost at 10,000 as well. So I'm not sure if it's because we have a bigger display on this device for the internal display, but I basically did not have it open while running those benchmark numbers. Now, when we go to GPU scores, our GPU was a good respectable 16,561, while when we look at it from the S25 Ultra comparison, that had 19,651. So bear in mind there. That being said, it's still in line with what we expect from a Snapdragon 8 Elite device. Now, as gamers, what should we expect from this device? Should we expect good performance? Should we expect high temperatures because it's super thin? And also, should we expect slowdowns? That's the things we want to check out. But let's start off with, of course, the games we like to play. We'll be playing COD Mobile because Warzone is no longer a thing. Oh my God, why? Also playing PUBG Mobile, playing some Genshin Impact. We will play Diablo Immortal, and finally we will end it with Grid Legends. So starting off with Call of Duty Mobile, playing the game at its max settings and jumping into gameplay using the main display at 8 inches, we're getting a solid, sweet 120 frames per second. Easy, no issues, which is great. Now, my temperature stayed about 95 degrees, so that was good. And this game doesn't really task that much, which is why it's our first test game, just to see that it hits the bare minimum benchmark. Now we can easily transfer to our cover display, and that's pretty fluid, something that sometimes done for a while, so that works pretty well. And gaming on there still stays at 120 frames per second. Now moving over to PUBG Mobile at its max settings again here. On the cover display is 120 frames per second. Going into the internal display, it does 120 frames per second as well. So it's very smooth gameplay all the way through. And the temperatures begin to rise a little bit. So it went up to about 99 to 101 in terms of playing PUBG Mobile, but it was still solid. And again, switching back and forth with both screens worked out pretty well. Now, moving over to a game like Genshin Impact, which can be very tasking. We, of course, went with the maximum settings for the game, 60 FPS gaming. Started off with the internal display, the 8-inch display, and we were getting between 55 to 59 frames per second. And it stayed on that level for a while. We played there for around 10 minutes. And then we switched over to the cover display, and then we bumped up to 60 frames per second. It stayed at 60 frames for another 15, 20 minutes of gameplay. So we had about 30 minutes to about 40 minutes of gameplay, on the device on playing Genshin Impact, and it did really well on that. I would say because the internal display is larger at 8 inches, which is why I'm seeing some of that variation, but overall it stayed pretty steady on there. Now, in terms of temperatures, this is where we saw our highest peak in temperatures at about 108 degrees maximum throughout the gameplay session. And this is around the camera housing in between the first and second lens. That's where we saw the highest temperatures from the system. But it played well and then decided to cool off as we continued playing as well. So the vapor chamber in there does a really good job in protecting the system. Now, I don't know how the vapor chamber is laid out in this device, but Samsung has done a really good job with it. Now, when we move over to Grid Legends, the game is one that we went on the max settings, performance mode. And at performance mode, you're looking at a max 30 frames a second and it stays at that. But the game ran pretty smooth. I wish it, of course, could do it higher. I think also it just needs some more optimization because this game should actually be running quite well and maybe close to 60 frames per second. That's just my own thought process here, but it still ran smooth enough. And again, was able to use the controller. This is where the controllers really come into play. Using both the Kishi Pro XL as well as the GameStar G8 XL, those work really well. And it really flows well. I think the Kishi is more suited because it does have those lift pads compared to the GameStar, but it still works pretty well there. Now, finally, the last game is Diablo Immortal. Now, this is a game that has full controller support. So we jumped in and we used it on the controller. Very fluid, very fast. Performance was set at its high performance level and the game handled it very well. Very smooth. Temperatures stayed around 100 to 105. And then it kind of cooled off down a bit to about 102. So I said like 102 was the average for temperatures. But gameplay was pretty smooth. Now, this is where I wanted to try Circle to Search because I was stuck in a dungeon and I could kind of grind it out with the guy, but I found out who the character is because I wasn't paying attention and how I could beat him. And with Circle to Search here, you basically swipe up and then you press and hold and you can circle the character. Now, I would say it's not as in-depth as I would like because it just gives me a Google AI definition of what the character is. So it does identify that. And then it also gives options for videos. Able to scroll through to find a video that said how to kill the character, which is great. So what I would love to see is better integration in gaming where I pull up that video on YouTube, it pops up as a pop-up window and I don't have to spend time resizing it. So it's still early. This is the first time we're seeing it in action. Hopefully that's something that happens or comes to play because then with a device that has an 8-inch display, I can either have it at split screen or a pop-up location and be able to beat the boss while watching it in the first place. So work in progress, but still pretty cool. Now, before we continue, I want to give you some sound samples listening to audio of gameplay on the Galaxy Z Fold 7. Okay, Audio is pretty good. We had an audio test in our comparison video of the Z Fold 6, 7, and Special Edition, which you guys should go check out. But for gaming, this thing works really well. The speakers still remain the same. And I do like the fact that when you're holding it to game, temperatures don't rise that much because most of the temperatures is housed on this side. So if you're holding it this way, it actually feels pretty cool to the touch overall. Again, that's a good thing. The weight also is fantastic in terms of gaming because it feels so light, so it doesn't feel bulky, doesn't feel heavy in your hands, and you can game for longer periods of session. Because this is the Android device, Samsung also supports PD charging while gaming, so which means that if you're plugged in and you're gaming, you're not using your battery, you're actually just basically taking juice directly from your charger, which is fun and solid. So battery life has been good, but then again, it's early. I haven't gamed as long and as much. Total game time I've done today is about 2 hours. Also half that was plugged for game testing. So I'll say an hour, maybe 15 minutes of straight gameplay. And I went down from 100 to 81% while making this video. So yeah, take it as you will. Again, this is a 4,400 milliamp battery. It's smaller, but it's a better optimized chipset. So again, it's a bit early to see what that gameplay is, but I think it should be closer. It's slightly better than what we had from last year. I think overall the gaming experience on this device is really good. I like the performance of the vapor chamber here. I thought it would actually run hotter. I was expecting these to get higher. And I think, yes, if you are playing for like an hour plus, you're gonna see higher temperatures. So definitely at that point, plug in. But gaming is really impressive. What I'm going to do next is try and set up some PC emulators on here so I can play games like The Witcher 3 on this system. I'll try and do it over this weekend for you guys, but this has been a fun experience first day. And again, this device is just so thin and it handles pretty well. So if you have any questions, any comments, let me know. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I'm losing my voice because I've been making videos all day, but let me know if there's anything you want to see in terms of PC games that I can play on this system. Leave your thoughts for that down below because I want to add them and showcase to you guys. Either way, this is Thunder E saying thank you and always enjoy your entertainment. And you guys thought I wouldn't play Xbox Game Pass games. Yes, of course, I've got a larger display. So which means I'm playing Doom, The Dark Ages. I'm still trying to finish the game. And this is a great way to continue that, especially when you have just the larger real estate right here on this device. I think is awesome for that, you know, console gaming experience on the go. Controller, again, the Razer Kishi Pro XL really does a good job here. My GameStar has a bad stick drift because I actually broke it. But then again, this thing is just pretty cool for that kind of gaming experience.